Wayne Mazzoni here with us for this webinar presentation. Wayne, thank you for being here again with us. I'm very confident that everybody here this evening will walk away with something that will help them in the process if they are serious about becoming a student athlete at the collegiate level. I'm very confident of that. Now, Wayne, this might be the over the 12th or 13th time we've done this together, and we've always received positive feedback. And I know you'll touch on a lot of things here, as many topics and pointers as you can. And before I forget, I need to thank the Bobcat Boosters, our sponsoring organization for this presentation. The Bobcat Boosters, they're behind everything that we do and everything we promote for the student athletes. So a big thank you to the Boosters from Byram Hills. And Wayne, so Wayne is a Division I baseball coach at Sacred Heart University here in Connecticut, located in Connecticut. And Wayne has basically spoken all over the country on major networks, and he's written books. He has some very good publications out there that I know have been very helpful to a lot of the families that I've given them to over the years. With Wayne's background as an athlete, as a coach, as a presenter of how to give information and help people and help student athletes find their way. I'm excited for tonight. It's always a pleasure to listen to Wayne present on this topic. I consider Wayne to be an expert in this area, and you'll soon find out why if you have not heard one of Wayne's presentations prior to tonight. Wayne, what I'd like to do is I'll turn everything over to you.
Great.
Hopefully everybody has logged on by now and ready to, if I'm correct, they don't have to take notes, because we will I'll be able to send this session out and post it on the school district website, right? For those
Yes.
who might miss, and for anybody who wants to go back and watch it again. Is that accurate, Wayne?
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Wayne Mazzoni, and he'll lead us through tonight's presentation. And if you have questions, put them into the chat. We could do it that way. And I also believe you'll address some of those. If you don't do it during the presentation, you'll do it
Yes.
after the presentation.
Yeah, that's first of all, thank you, Mr. Castagna, for having me and the school and the Booster Club. We've done a bunch of them now. This is our second webinar. We did one in the spring, and these webinars have actually been great. People are really happy with it. The only thing you lack, as you've all done the Zooms, it's harder to interact during the course. A lot of times I would ask questions throughout. It just gets too difficult. So if you have a question, either write it down, put it in the chat. I believe there's a way you can actually send it to me individually where I'll see it at the end if you don't want to ask in front of everybody. And then I'll give out my email and my cell phone at the end if you have a question tonight, tomorrow, in a month that relates to the recruiting process. So consider me kind of a friend of the district to help you in any way, because this process is not fun. It's a little overwhelming, and Lord knows COVID has put a few curveballs in it too. So I'm going to give my normal presentation, share my screen in a second. As I go through it, I will add in the COVID pieces that make things a little bit different. So obviously those of you that are, especially if they're seniors here, that are wondering what to do and kind of got in that rock and a hard place between the dead period, which I'll review, and then college rosters where they're at. We'll talk about that and what some of your options are. So I'm going to start to share my screen. And start the presentation. Okay, so hopefully we see what's on the screen here, today's date. So the bulk of this presentation, the way I like to run is I like to put it into sections, which I'll go through. Before I get to that, the question I get asked the most outside of these seminars, webinars, is what does a college coach look for in a recruit? So I always kind of start off with that. And I think it's important to realize it's very competitive. So 7% of high school athletes, seniors, move on to play Division 1, 2, 3, community college, junior college at any level. So I'm often asked, well, what do I need? What does my son or daughter need to get into that 7%? So that's going to be the first slide. And then we'll kind of break down the three main steps of the process. Somewhat obvious, but maybe not for everybody. You need to be really good. The better you are at your sport, the easier the recruiting process is. So there was a golfer or a tennis player, I think I saw typed in here. If you're really highly ranked, you have a low PGA handicap, you're in good shape in terms of the recruiting process. The more talented you are, the easier the recruiting gets. Number two, if you're motivated, if you're structured, if you have a strength training program, nutrition, you get your rest, you are motivated to be great, that's going to win out. Because the fact is, if you achieve your goal of being in that 7% and you get to college, the competition only gets stronger. Everybody wants to play. Rosters are heavy. It's to get playing time. You need to keep that motivation, needs to become a habit. And then the third piece is you have to have the body for your sport. We're covering a lot of sports here tonight, but when a coach is looking at you, do you have the physical traits that make sense and that make you stand out and put you in that 7%? So you need to be in good shape. You need to be talented. You need to be motivated. Number two is you have to be a serious student. I'll talk on the first slide how your academics need to, or will help you sort of shrink your list of schools. But keep in mind that college coaches chose, like me, to coach college over their other alternative, which was to be a high school teacher and coach. That's the way 90% of us would have gone if we weren't a college coach. And probably the biggest reason that put us in the college route was we get to pick the team. We get to recruit and make the team shape after ourselves or the way we want it. We don't just have tryouts at the school and take whoever shows up. So we're recruiting. And the point is, if we're a lacrosse coach and we needed one goalie in the class of 2022, and we're serious with 10 kids and 3 don't check out to be very serious about their grades, we're just going to move on to the other ones that will. So you need to not only have grades that fit the schools you like, but you need to be serious about your schoolwork. No one wants to recruit an academic headache. So your grades need to be in order. And certainly I know during this Zoom, I don't know what Byram's doing, probably a day in, day out between the home learning and the in-class learning, you can lose your way. You need to lock in. Your grades matter at all times. Number 3, you have to have an understanding of the recruiting process. Some of you do, some of you hear it from your club team, your high school coach, your buddy, your friend, Instagram feed, but I want to try to make tonight about giving you a more clear path as opposed to just hearing a little bits and pieces. And then the last piece is really, what is your plan in place to get your grades to where they need to be, to get your body to where it needs to be, to get your nutrition, to get your sleep, to get your skill in your sport. Because I have seen athletes in 9th or 10th grade that I've graded out as just okay, not good enough to play at my Division I level, maybe not good enough to play Division III. And I've seen that same player 18 months later, and they're completely a different person, one that I would highly recruit. And what was the difference? Maybe they got motivated, maybe they got physically hit a growth spurt, but more than likely they woke up to what the competition was and they started to get motivated about getting better. So it's competitive. Let's just start off right here with it's competitive. And the majority of kids from most high schools will go the Division III route. I played football and baseball at Gettysburg College, Division III, loved it, wouldn't change a thing. The majority of people that are on these webinars are at every high school. I just want to play D1, and that's, you should realize that the jump between Byram Hill's level of athletics and Division III is a huge jump, and it's not club sports or 13th grade sports. It's very, very competitive. Okay, so this bulk of this presentation will start right here, and this slide and the next slide cover the first step of the recruiting process, which is there's about 3,300 colleges in the United States that have athletics. Not in every sport. So I think someone put in track and field, or there was golf. Not every school will offer every one of the sports, but 3,300 colleges have athletics. And it is very impossible for you in Byram Hills to go, you know what? Well, I play lacrosse and I'm going to get every college coach in the country to know about me. Maybe they do if you're one of the best on the East Coast. Otherwise, you're going to have to do a little work on yourself. So the thing that I always tell people to do it for step 1, and I'll throw it on the screen here now, is you have to start figuring out what you want as a student athlete, as a person, before you get to really that athletic level. I should rephrase that. You should figure out what you want as a student and a person first, meaning how far from home do you want to go to school? Do you want to be in the city? Do you want to be in the suburbs, in the country? Do you want a very small school, a very large school? Do you know what you want to major in? What are your grades? And the reality is most of us figure out what we want by trial and error, by actually getting on campuses and just seeing the place. So if I was in person, I would say to the group in the audience, how many athletes or any athlete in the audience have you been to more than 10 colleges? When I say that in person, no one raises a hand. And I said, well, you've come to a webinar or a seminar about the recruiting process, yet you haven't really visited any schools. The number one thing you have to realize is you are the customer, you want to get it right, and you want to visit schools. So if you're going to go to Boston for Thanksgiving to have Thanksgiving with your aunt's family, I think you should hit 5 schools on the way and 5 schools on the way back. No admissions tour, no meet any coaches, but go see Tufts, go see Babson and Northeastern and BU and BC and maybe Harvard or UMass Amherst, Rhode Island, whatever it is. Start to get out there and look, because if all of us on this webinar went to UMass Amherst, there would be about 10 people, 10 people that go, oh my God, I love it, I'd commit here right now. Another 10 would go, don't ever bring me back to this place, middle of nowhere, big school. And the other 10 would go, it's all right, I need to see more schools. Ultimately, you want to get your feet wet at all different types of environments. And even if you said, I want to go south or Midwest or out west, why should I go look at UMass Amherst? Because if you like it, you can go to your guidance counselor, or you can go to Naviance or College Board or whatever the school might use, or go to Princeton Review, or go to the library and get one of those books and start saying, what schools in the Carolinas are like UMass Amherst? And it's going to list it for you. So if you're just going, I just want to play ball somewhere, you're doing it incorrectly, because if you see at the top of the slide, it says the broken leg scenario. And that's a reminder to me to tell you that unfortunately, less than 50% of college freshmen play 4 years of the sport. I'm going to say that again. You've worked your whole life. You've played soccer since you're 5. You got recruited to go to Quinnipiac. It's a dream come true. You got good academic money, maybe some athletic money. And by your junior year, you're no longer playing. 1 out of 2 that happens to, they get hurt. They get cut. There's a coaching change. You're not having any fun. The coach out recruits them, gets a better player. They need an internship. Their grades are suffering. They have job interviews. Something happens with the family. So the reality is, if you pick a school and say, you know what, I don't really want to go to Manhattan. Manhattan College is fantastic. But maybe you say, I never really want to go to Manhattan. It's close by. It's not the right school for me, but the soccer coach loves me. Maybe that works out to be a great thing. But maybe if the soccer doesn't work, you go, oh my God, they don't even have my major. It's not the school I wanted to be at. And you've mismanaged the process. So I would say to you, parents, students, unless you could come back to me and say, here's 20, 25, 30, 40 schools that fit a little bit of what I'm about, you're not really ready to start the recruiting process, unless you can answer a few of those questions. And it could be as simple as, I want to be 3 hours from home, study something in English or literature. I want 5 to 15,000 students. I have a 3.0 and a 1,000 on my PSAT. If you could answer those 4 questions, anyone that knows what they're doing could say, yeah, these 40 schools, one of these 40 is going to be for you. And we haven't even mentioned the word athletics or sports yet. So I'll just advise you, the transfer portal, if you're not familiar with the transfer portal, it's where kids in college put themselves when they want to transfer, which is a disaster of a process for a variety of reasons. You have to leave friends, start over, lose credits, turn yourself into a 5-year college student at minimum, and most likely sit out an athletic year. The transfer portal is packed with kids who did not do it right the first time. And what they really didn't do is do a soul searching, didn't do the homework on schools, just found a coach that maybe liked them, went there. 2 months later, a year later, they want to get out. You want to do it right the first time, okay? The next piece of this, and it's all on the screen right now, is, you figuring out how good you are at your sport. If you've done your homework and can answer some of those questions from the first slide, then the next question is, are you a high-level Division I at the top programs in the country? Are you mid-level Division I, lower-level Division I? I'm at Sacred Heart. I'm not ashamed to say we're a lower-level Division I program. We are not the Clemsons, the Florida States, the UCLAs, the Boston colleges. We know that. So we know how that when we're recruiting. Are you a Division II athlete? Or are you a Division III athlete? Or like 93% of high school athletes, are you Division IV currently, which there is no Division IV. Maybe you're going to play club sports or intramurals. So the more you can do to figure out your right level, the better off you will be. And I hate to say it, but I put it up there in green again as a reminder. Your parents are the worst judge of athletic talent who ever walked the planet, okay? And because, and I've got kids, I can say that, we love our kids, so we probably overestimate them because of parental love, right? But secondly, we aren't necessarily looking at the huge pool of recruits in the Northeast, in the East Coast, in the United States. I know there was at least 5 soccer people on here. My office is right next to the soccer coach at Sacred Heart. He's on the phone speaking foreign languages all the time. They're recruiting internationally. Okay. So what I'm getting at is, are you, just because you're one of the better players at Byram Hills and maybe even on your travel team, you might be a Division I player. You might not be good enough to play anymore. So here's all the things I can think of that you should or could do to get a better idea of your talent level. Number one, ask any coach that's with you on a regular basis. High school coach, travel coach, if you're in a sport that gets lessons like golf or tennis, that coach that's with you all the time, you got to ask them, because they know you more than just the way I might see you as a college coach in one day or a little bit of video, whatever the case is. So you need to have a sit down with that coach and say, listen, I'm really interested in playing college lacrosse. Where do you think I should be looking and why? If you want to ask that, what do I lack? What do I need to work on? Friends that are playing in college, many of you through the high school, through your community of people, maybe your travel team, if you play on one, you know of kids that are now in college, maybe even a sophomore in college that you have played with, they've played with you, you know how the talent level is. And you can say, hey, how are you doing at that next level? You went to University of Hartford. Are you going to play this year? Are you going to be redshirted? If I was on that team, how would I fit in? You know, it's a great question to ask up here, a friend to friend, and get some of that feedback. The camps and showcases, which cover just about every sport that you guys typed in the chat, some of these can help you for recruiting, although none are going on in COVID, which we'll get to in a minute. But the camps and showcases have a benefit for 2 main reasons when you're trying to go, gee, I'm in 10th grade, I play soccer, where do I fit into the recruiting landscape? To go to some of these events, whether it's on a college campus or just a big event in general, a showcase, an ID camp, 2 things happen. With your gut, you look around at the other 100 kids there and go, wow, like I'm middle of the pack here. Okay, if you're middle of the pack at an event, a 2-day at camp with 100 girls playing soccer, you're a Division III player. If you're the best 1 or 2, you're probably a Division I scholarship player. And if you're the bottom 10 to 15 or 20, you probably can't play at any college level. My advice, without stressing you out, because that's what this webinar is about giving you a path to make you less stressful. The earlier you can figure out what you need to do and where you stack up, I think the better. I think it's better to find out in 9th or 10th grade where your, volleyball skills are, as opposed to finding out in your senior year when now you don't have as much time to work on whatever your deficiencies are. The second piece of these camps, not every one of them, but most of them, somebody is grading you. A college coach is on staff grading you. So if you go to that Penn State volleyball camp and you put on a team and maybe the Bucknell coach is coaching you for that week, at the end of that week, the Bucknell coach, either online, some camps do it online, some do it handwritten, they'll give you an evaluation. You're a D3 volleyball player, here's why: height, skill, athleticism, strength, whatever it might be. So the more you can go to some of these events to see what the competition is, the better off you'll be able to judge yourself. Next thing, again, a little bit of, I'll kind of hit more of the COVID stuff specifically in the next slide, but watching the colleges that you, at your level, or excuse me, in your sport at the different levels would be really, really helpful. And I don't just mean on TV, because football and basketball make the TV. Most other sports don't make the TV, and if they do, it's just the finals, the championships. So if you play field hockey, you're not going to see Amherst versus Williams on TV to know what that Division III field hockey is like. So plus, every sport looks easier on TV, right? I think I can play for the Jets when I watch the TV. I probably could play for the Jets, but that's because they're terrible. But I digress. So watching the colleges play, watch them practice, watch a strength training session, watch and see the speed and the size and the strength and the commitment. It's a huge wake-up call. okay? Because ultimately, and I'm going to talk about the individual sports in a second, what happens to many, not saying you, not saying all the Byram Hills, but many kids should probably play at a Franklin, a Marshall, a Dickinson, or a Haverford, or Johns Hopkins at one of these unbelievable schools. But they say, I'm going D1 or bust, okay? They're getting interest from these D3 schools. They're basically blowing off those coaches because they're waiting for the Vanderbilts and the Clemsons of the world to come get them. Meanwhile, they eventually realize they're not a Division I player. They try to go back to those Division III schools that are great fits, and now it's too late. So if you misjudge your talent level, you're going to spend a whole lot of time chasing things that don't make a fit for you. So the more you can find out where you stack up, the better. The individual sport athletes, there's probably more sports than I put here, but tennis, golf, track, swim. It's easier to figure out your talent level because in essence, you are competing against yourself, right? So if you swim the 200-meter backstroke and you take your time, you can go to the college websites, D1, D2, D3, and see what their reported times are. And unless you say to yourself, you know what, I haven't hit my growth spurt, or I'm not getting the proper coaching in the pool, if I get the coach at such and such school, I'll really develop and cut my time. You are what you are. You are what you run the mile. You are what your PGA handicap is. Whereas you could be a softball player and say, I've started on varsity since 9th grade, and I hit third in the order, and I hit 570. No one cares. No college coach in a team sport is really going to care about your stats for a variety of reasons. But the biggest one is we don't know the level of competition to get those stats. So maybe you play 2 games in a row against a terrible team with bad pitching and you go 8 for 8. And then the third game is against a team with a pitcher committed to college who's really, really good, and you strike out 4 times. But your overall average looks tremendous. But when you stacked up against the real pitching in softball, it overwhelmed you. So stats can be skewed, especially high school stats and summer stats for that matter. But individual sport athletes, it is easier, unless, like I said, you think you physically have not hit your growth spurt, or you're undercoached in some way on the shot put, or whatever it might be that you feel is the issue. So ultimately, what you're trying to do is say, you know what, I've talked to a bunch of people, I've been to some camps. This takes a while, by the way. You don't just watch this webinar and go, yeah, I know I'm a D2 player. But so you do some homework and you go, I'm probably a D2 soccer player, probably Division II. Well, what you can do is take your list of schools from the beginning part that fit you as a student, that fit you as a person, and say, all right, who has lower level Division I soccer? That's some of my, reach schools. Who are all the Division II programs on my list that are probably my target schools, and maybe some of the better Division III schools, and we'll call them safety schools if we want to use the typical terms. I don't know, that could be 5 schools, 10, 15, 20, but now you have a list of schools that really do fit you in every capacity. Because again, college is expensive. You're the customer. You're the one that should do the research. Same way for looking for a job. There'll be a lot of places that want to hire you to work in a job that you'll hate. To find the ultimate really good jobs is a little bit of work, okay? Same with a relationship. You want to find the person of your dreams. It's not just meet the first person and ask them out. It's an involved process. This is no different. So before I move off of this slide, I always get asked, and sometimes I don't cover it, is I put in there, and I think I alluded to it before, it's 168 hours in a week. What is your plan to get better? What is your structure to develop? If you think someone's told you need to put on 15 pounds of muscle, how's it going to happen? When? What days are you going to work out? What are you going to eat? Are you going to use MyFitnessPal to track your calories and log in your meals? Are you going to pack food ahead of time and have chicken and broccoli and rice in a container? Or are you just going to say after practice, let's just get online at McDonald's, right? So if you have that motivation and you have that structure, those are generally the people that are going to win out in the long run. Okay. So again, step number 1, which we've covered, is doing some homework to figure out schools that make a fit for you based on your athletics, your personal preferences on a college, and your academics. Okay. I saw there was one question. I'm just going to peek at it. Okay, I saw the question. It's a baseball specific question. We'll wait for a little bit for that one. Okay, so the phase 2 right here, next big chunk is just on this one slide, is you've done your homework and you have Lehigh, Lafayette, Bucknell, Stonehill, Bentley, Tufts, and Trinity as your list of schools. Great, right? You're ahead of most people if you've actually have a list, if you know what you like. The next step is to get your package of yourself as a person, as a student, as an athlete in front of these coaches to get feedback. And if you see on this screen, it says, if you get a no from a college coach, you've gotten further than most ever get. Most don't have any conversation at all, even rejections, even we're not recruiting goalies, we don't think you're good enough, your grades aren't good enough, whatever the case is, they don't even have any communication whatsoever. They just go to college and never play a sport again. So if you get Bucknell and Lehigh to say, man, we think you're a talented player, but Bucknell says you don't have the grades to get in, Lehigh says, we're set for goalies in your recruiting class, you actually are getting some feedback, and now you can continue down your list, because you don't need 20 schools to like you. You need 1 or 2 or 3 on your list of schools that you like, they like you back, and you're going to be able to narrow down which one of those is the place that you're going to enroll in. So there are really 3 main methods, and this is where we'll talk some COVID specific stuff, and I'm just going to throw them on the screen. I would normally take some polls in person, but here's the 3 ways you can get recruited and get evaluated. Let me back that up. Your goal, again, is to get evaluated, for them to know who you are at Byram Hills High School, that you're a class of 2022 softball shortstop, and get them to know you and then make an evaluation on you. So prior to the dead period, and this is a good time for me to explain the dead period. Some of you probably know it like the back of your hand. Some of you may a little, and some don't know at all. All these recruiting rules, just first of all, and there's a lot of them, but the dead period has hit everyone the most with the recruiting process. The recruiting rules are for Division I and II, the scholarship levels. Division III still recruits, but doesn't offer scholarships. They don't follow the same set of guidelines as the programs with scholarships. When COVID hit, they started to month by month continue to call it a dead period. March, April, May, June, July, August, September. In September, they banged the rest of 2020. And either January 1 will go back to non-dead period, and I'm going to explain what it is, or it'll continue on. The dead period means we can't leave campus to watch your high school, to watch a camp, to watch your travel team, to watch anything. We cannot meet you at your house. We cannot meet you at the high school. A dead period is we can't leave campus to recruit. Second part of the dead period is you are not allowed to come to campus to meet with the coaching staff. You can still tour on your own. You can still do an admissions tour. You cannot have a sit down with a college coach on campus during the dead period. Now, just so we're on the same page, during this time since March till now, I've gotten commitments from 4 kids during the dead period. How? I can Zoom with them. I can phone call with them. I can FaceTime with them. I could do whatever I want. I'm still recruiting them. I just can't physically go to see them, and they physically can't come to campus, and I can't do a tour myself. But recruiting still has to happen. You still need to fill the class of 2021. Yes, some rosters at college levels are getting fuller now because kids that would have normally graduated and left are staying because they got an extra year of eligibility. But it doesn't change that we still need to recruit, because no college coach is going to say, well, I'm stacked, I don't need the class of 21 kids, I'll just move on to 22. You'll have a huge gap in your roster. That makes sense. You ultimately want to recruit the same, you want the same number of seniors, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. So the roster always has some balance to it. So coaches have still recruited the class of 2021, just in a different way. So I'm going to promise to refer back to that too. But the ultimate way is to be seen playing live. And the best thing you can do previous, if you've done one, or when the dead period ends, is to go to the camp on the campus of the schools that you like. So if you want to play lacrosse at Stonehill, there's nothing better that you can do than look on their website, see when their prospect camp is, and go to it. It'll be cheaper. You get to visit the school, see the athletic facilities, meet the entire coaching staff, meet players on the team, and the coach knows you're interested in the school. So keep this in mind. This is one of the very difficult parts of recruiting, is we don't know if you like us. So for example, most of you on your side probably had some events, some games started to be streamed once COVID hit, right? So that baseball tournament that we couldn't go see, was now streamed online and we could log on and look at it. Okay, well, in the beginning, I know personally I did that a lot. And then after a while, I'm like, you know what, I'm sitting at my computer in June, it's a nice day out, and I'm watching hours and hours of film. And then the kids that I'm calling tell me they have no interest in Sacred Heart. That's what I like about our own prospect camp, and many coaches do in their sports, is when you sign up for that school's event, you've bypassed the, gee, I wonder if they like our school. So when you have a narrowed list, ultimately, that is going to be the fastest way that you can move the process forward. Go to whatever, just about every school and every sport has this camp, a prospect event. And if they don't host their own, I'm sure they'd be happy to tell you, here's where we go. In July, we go to this event, these meets, these, and they're going to list that out. So ultimately, you're going to try to go to one of the camps, events, meet something that puts you in the same place as them. Without these live events, and again, even the streaming could work, but it's difficult. Your video matters now. You're going to need video. Any video, past video, make video, anything. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, highlights, full game, whatever it is. And I think any sport, I don't care if you're a golfer, you play tennis, you swim, you run track. I think video is helpful because coach gets to see the way you can perform, your stroke, all that type of thing. And it doesn't have to stress you out. You don't have to hire, someone from Hollywood to shoot and direct the video and upload it to some fancy recruiting service. It could be very simply filmed off a phone, or if the school films games, or if you have any footage, edit it down, throw it on YouTube, and that becomes your video. And I've watched more video in 2020 than I ever have before. It's not some sports, like a football, always heavily recruited off video because football doesn't have travel teams, right? Your high school footage is basically your resume, put it on Huddle and then watch it. Other sports, it's a different story. But just about everyone is watching a whole lot more video than they ever have before. And even the kids that I mentioned before that were having things streamed, a kid will send me a link and say, Coach, this is a 5-hour video that they streamed. I'm at minute 47 to minute 52. That's when you want to watch. Great. I'm happy to do that. Now I can click and just bypass right to the spot to watch this player. So video has become more important than ever before. Last thing that is your references, which always mattered, now matter even more. And that could be in one of two ways. That could be something that's on your list when you email a coach and say, hey, here's 2 other coaches. Here's my high school coach. Here's my travel coach. Here's my instructor, whatever it might be. Or even better yet, some of these people make a phone call for you, or an email or a text. I know from all the people that I've researched, this is one area people do not overlook. In other words, as a college coach, when a player writes us, we're like, I'll take a look, but no player ever writes us and tells us that they're not good. They all write saying they're great. They hustle, they're a good student, right? Some of them check out, some of them don't. When a high school coach or someone we trust calls us and says, hey, it's this kid you got to take a look at, I guarantee you this, they will get looked at. I can't guarantee you that person's going to get recruited because every school has a different needs in different sports, etc., but they're going to get looked at. So if you don't yet have a couple of references on your side, you better get some. Okay. And I don't believe, I've said this before, I want to say it now, I don't believe it's your high school coach's job to manage your recruiting process. They're not your agent. They shouldn't spend an hour a day trying to get Johnny to Villanova. Okay. But if Johnny comes in and says, listen, I got 3 schools, these are my top 3. I'm wondering if you could make a call or an email to get my profile on the top of their list. Could you do that? And they agree with the schools you're giving them, they're going to do that. I think you have to give them any coach for that matter, you should be giving them very specific instructions. Please call this coach, and this coach. You're not saying, let's meet an hour a day to talk about the recruiting. You're giving them a specific action plan to follow. Okay. And I'll take some questions on this. I'll maybe look at the chat or certainly at the end, but I want to hit some of these other notes that are at the bottom here, almost more reminders for me. I wish there was one magic way that you would get recruited. The reality is you have to kind of hit it from a bunch of angles. Be a good player, go to events, be on your team, have a good high school season, have a good travel season when that's available, have good video, have references. You need a little bit of everything. It's not just, I'm going to the Penn State camp and that's all I have to do. I'm going to do nothing else. And after that camp, I'll get recruited. I mean, it would be wonderful if it was all that simple. Anything that's worth it is not that simple. Follow up. constantly follow up. Be a little bit of a squeaky wheel. Did the coach see your video? Did they hear from your coach? Are they still recruiting class of 21? Do they need left wingers in the class of 22? Ask some questions. Be persistent. Okay, if you're eventually not getting enough feedback, then maybe you drop it. But squeaky wheel works, and especially if you tell them you like their college and why you like their college and what you know about their program, and you're not just blanket mass mailing, 500 schools to try to get someone to respond. Recruiting services, I think, are all a waste. The NCSAs, the Be Recruiteds, the College Prospects of America, I think actually play to your detriment and hurt you as opposed to help you. So my advice would be figure out the way to root on your own and basically sell you or your parents on. If you want to be a good parent, you want to do the most for your kid, get them to sign up for this recruiting service. Yet in my entire life, I've never found a player through a recruiting service. I wish it was so easy as I could log into my laptop, find kids in the class of 2022, and then go to the beach and have a drink with an umbrella in it. It's not that simple. It's a lot of work. And then when is the right time? Maybe the biggest question I get asked, when's recruiting supposed to start? When the answer, I'll give you a few different answers. Number one is most kids, it's the summer before senior year when the heaviest recruiting often happens. You're developed, that's the time most coaches are looking for you as an upcoming senior. You're not in school, they're not on campus, they're recruiting, it's the biggest time. Junior year for most people at some point is when, especially at the higher levels, sometimes it happens even younger. In those cases, there's recruiting rules around that's not supposed to happen in 9th or 10th grade, but there's legitimate ways around that. And it's usually in the football, basketball world. It used to be lacrosse. Lacrosse used to be very, very early with the commitments, and that changed when they realized everyone was really, it was a crazy battle of making 8th graders and 9th graders commit to colleges, and they changed that system. But it should be when you're ready to talk to a coach, when you feel like your skills are developed. That's when you should start putting yourself out there. Again, I think you could go try to figure out, gee, what level is right for me when you're younger, 9th grade, 10th grade. What do I need to work on? Do I need my speed? Do I need strength? Do I need stick handling skills? Whatever it might be, so you could work on it. But the time to tackle the recruiting process is when you feel you are really ready for it. Okay, I'm just going to take a quick peek at those questions here. All right, nothing that's burning. I'll get back to that at the end. All right, so we're going to move along here. And before I get to the next slide, I do want to say, because the next phase of this talk is you are being recruited. What happens when you are being recruited? What do you have to tackle? And being recruited means personal phone call, personal, and again, with COVID now, we can't see you at the high school, can't see you at the house, can't see you at a game and talk to you personally, can't bring you to campus. But you'll know when you're being recruited when we call you on the phone and say, we heard about you from your coach, or, we saw you pre-COVID, whatever, you'll know. If you go, gee, I wonder if they're recruiting me by this email I got, they're not recruiting. It's very, very specific. It's very personal, okay? So once you are being recruited, the first of the things that you have to tackle is the Eligibility Center. Okay, so I'm going to explain what this is as simple as I can. And it's for Division 1 and 2, and not really for Division 3, but there's a little tweak to that I'll go over. In a big picture, 10,000-foot view, every scholarship Division 1 and 2 sport, you have to have met certain academic requirements graduating your high school before you are able to play as a college freshman. This isn't about admissions. This isn't about whether you're getting recruited. This is about when the NCAA does an evaluation, were your grades good enough when you graduated high school to be able to play as a college freshman? And a couple of these are now tweaked a little bit for COVID, okay? I'm going to just review it first without that. Division 1, you're going to play at the Division 1 level. The NCAA needs to know what your GPA is in the 16 core courses designated by your high school. And I say that because we have Byram Hills, we have somebody from Briarcliff. Every high school has a different designation of what their core courses are in English, math, social studies, and science, starting in the 9th grade. So in 9th grade, you get grades that count for your NCAA eligibility. When you graduate your school, in those 16 core courses, you could be no lower than a 2.3 GPA. No lower than, if you're below a 2.3, if in the 16 core courses you have a 2.29, you cannot play your freshman year in college. You could practice with the team, you could redshirt, you cannot play in games, you could play as a fifth year senior or grad student. If you have a 2.3 on the nose, then you need a 9.20 on the math and verbal on the SAT or higher. And if you're taking any notes, this 2.3.org is the best site to explain more about the clearinghouse and more, and we'll show you this sliding scale. Again, the lower your GPA, the higher your SAT or ACT needs to be, and the higher your GPA, the lower your board score needs to be. So when you're getting closer to this, and you're, man, I'm heading in at about a 2.8 in my core courses, you should be able to say 2.8. All right, here's the SAT I need or the ACT score that I need. And you need to meet those requirements. And just to keep this in mind, this is important. You cannot change this after you graduate. You can't graduate and go, I missed a core course, I didn't have this, I didn't have an SAT, and take it after. No, the day graduation happens, you either meet these requirements or you don't. There's no way to change it. Now, if you go to a post-grad year or a prep school, different story. But if you graduate your high school and don't have this, you can't take a summer course or do anything in those regards. Division 2 is different. They make it simple, 14 core courses. You need a minimum of a 2.0 and an 8.20. There is no sliding scale. Division 3, they used to never even say to do anything with this clearinghouse. They would just say, don't do anything. And it became a problem when a kid wouldn't do anything. And then saying, you know what, I'm going to Division 3, I'm not wasting my time on this. And then the Division 1 or 2 coach would actually show interest, start to recruit them. And then the kid would have to go into this system, register, and it would take at least a month before the college coach can actually see the grades and move the recruiting process forward. So I don't know, 3 years ago, what they did was when you go to the website now, you'll get either Division 1 or 2 portal, where you create an account, register, pay money. The high school guidance department gets notified, they send in transcripts. Or you say Division 3, or I'm not sure, you create a profile, you don't pay anything. If you go play Division 3 or don't play it at all, nothing happens. If all of a sudden you need to switch to a Division 1 or 2 athlete, you literally click and pay the money, and the next day we can recruit you. You're in the system. So it's very smart. If you're definitely a college-bound student athlete, at some point in your junior year, so if you're a 2022, you should be going in and doing this. And then you can't get certified until your senior year. But it's nice to do it earlier. Maybe your guidance counselor or something says, hey, there's a red flag, you need an English course, or you better get your grades up. But this doesn't mean you're getting recruited. I want to emphasize that. Each year, hundreds of thousands of kids have spent their money for the Eligibility Center, but don't play in college. Okay. All right. Next part of this confusing process is you are getting recruited. You're feeling great. You got 5 schools calling you, telling you about their program, telling you about the school. It's fantastic. It's a great place to be, but it could also be confusing and overwhelming because a lot of people are now hitting you over the head and telling you why you should go to that school. So I've done or put 4 categories of things that you as the customer, you as the prospective student athlete need to find out what it's going to be like at one school compared to the other, so you can make an educated choice. And they fall into these 4 categories. Number 1 is academics. You're going to play ice hockey in college, but you want to major in chemistry. How's that going to work? Do the labs conflict with practice time? Do they mind that you're a chemistry major, or they're going to say you can't be a science major and play hockey for us? Do they have tutors? Do they have what's the issue for academic money? If you're on academic money and your grades go down, what are the parameters to keep your money? Do you get to pick classes ahead of all the other students so you can work it around your hockey schedule, as opposed to other schools that don't have any preference, and now you're going to be one of the last ones to choose based on a lottery system, and then you're out of luck with conflicts. So you're hopefully going to college to get a degree, to get an education, to get a job. So how the overriding question you need to get an answer to is, how do they manage athletics and academics? They're either going to tell you that when they recruit you. If they don't do that thoroughly, you need to be asking questions. Is there study hall for my freshman daughter who might need a little bit of looking after on her own for the first semester or for the first year? Okay. Many schools have these systems in place, but some don't. You need to ask. Second area, What are the coaches really like? What's the coaching staff are you going to spend all this time with really like? Do they coach in the way that fits you? What are they really like, as opposed to how they sounded over the phone for 3 half-an-hour conversations? You're going to make a life decision based on these 3 phone calls, and yet you never asked any players or parents on the team or did any other research, and you're getting yourself into a bad situation with a coach that doesn't fit you. Most coaches are good people, but again, if you have 3 or 4 schools, you're going to want to do your research to make the best choice. The same way, if you had 3 or 4 companies that want to hire you for a job, you'd probably ask a lot of questions about the boss, the person you're going to work for, before you decide which is the best place to go to work. Number 3, where did they see you? What do they like about you? Are they going to switch your position? Are they going to redshirt you as a freshman? How many other girls play attack? How many are in the class of 2022 are they recruiting in that position? So what is the competition? Why you're being recruited? What's likely to be your role and your playing time? And that it should be explained to you. And if not, you certainly have to ask that question, because if you don't, there are many people that found out once they were locked into the school in September that they were going to be redshirted and on the 5-year plan that they didn't know about. So it is your right to ask these questions. Plus, it's good. It shows your interest when you converse and say, Coach, what do you guys do for your strength training? What do your players do in the off season? You know, there's a variety of things you can ask to show some interest to make it a good conversation. The last part of this, I think, is very important, and just most people don't know because they haven't worked in a bunch of athletic departments like me. But how does life at each school differ? How do they travel? Do they travel in their own cars? Do they travel in vans? Do they travel in buses with Wi-Fi? Who pays for travel? Do they have to fundraise for the team? Who does the equipment? What gear do they get? What's the concussion policy? Do they do drug testing? Is there a strength and conditioning coach? Whose insurance pays for injury? All kinds of different questions that you should ask if they don't explain to you. They should be explaining this in recruiting. That's what recruiting is. Like, you need a car and you go to 3 different dealerships. They're going to explain why the Mazda is the best, the Toyota is the best. They're going to explain to you, but you should be able to look up and go, man, I read about this car, you know, that warranty is not as good as the other one. Hey, what about the warranty on this car? You should be asking questions. So if you don't, and you have 4 schools and 3 have a great strength and conditioning facility and coach, and the other 4th one you lift on your own in a crappy gym surrounded by all the students and the staff at the school, it's a big difference. Doesn't mean you won't pick that school, but you should know going in, rather than going, gee, I wonder now I get why they didn't show me any weight room when I was on my visit. Okay. All right. We're going to keep on rolling. I promise to answer all your questions. This now is just a pretty good overview of the realities of the admissions process, of how it relates as a coach and how it can help you as a student athlete. And obviously, for the past 2 years, I'm always careful with what I say, because there's been plenty of admission scandals and all kinds of things that have happened. That usually happens at certain schools. It certainly has never been anything that I've been involved in my place where I've worked. But this is how it goes in my entire life. I find a player I like. The first thing I do is I ask that player for a transcript. My college now, Sacred Heart, uses what we call a pre-read sheet, and we fill out a decent amount of information, from your address, your high school that you go to, your date of birth. Are you someone that's a scholarship candidate, or you're a preferred walk-on? What semester you entering? Phone number, social media accounts, what you possibly want to major in, your board scores. Have you had any disciplinary actions at the school? Have you had any, police, any felonies, misdemeanors? That's, you involved in community service? Are you possibly honors eligible? We fill out all this pre-read sheet, which I could show you after if you want to see what it looks like. And we submit that along with your transcript. Okay. Since COVID, this has been the only good thing of COVID. It used to be we'd send it inter-office mail, and it would take a week to 10 days to get this information back. Now we send it by email, and it literally comes back the next day. And it has one of these 3 scenarios on it. I'll start with C. They'll say you're inadmissible. Right then and there comes back saying this person is inadmissible. This is important. They're not saying you're denied from the university. You haven't applied. You haven't had a final set of grades and board scores and all that. You haven't applied. When you officially apply is when you'd get denied. But I might be asking for a first semester junior's grades, and I need to know. I can't go, gee, I'll still recruit this person. Let's hope they get their grades up. So if I get back from admissions that at this time you're inadmissible, I say, listen, I'm sorry, it stinks for us, it stinks for you. I hope you'll find another school. Maybe you want to try these other places. It's not going to work here. We move on. What we're hoping for is that it says you're admissible. Keep in mind, on the same token, you're not admitted to the school. You have not applied. You have not put your full grades in there yet. You could be admissible as a second semester sophomore in high school based on your 4 marking periods or whatever the way your school does it, and be denied when you actually come to apply because your grades tanked. So it means you're admissible at this time. And of course, that's what we're hoping for. And then we're also hoping that your grades are good enough that to qualify for an academic grant. And I've been at 5 schools, and it's the same at each one. The different merit amounts, the higher your grades are compared to the overall student body that we get, the more academic money you qualify for. And we're hoping and praying from every coaches that you get the highest academic grant we offer, which at Sacred Heart is $17,500. When you get the $17,500, and we're someone that we want to put our athletic money into, now we can add athletic money to that $17,500 and hopefully make a package that is affordable. And we'll talk about the scholarships next. But you'll find this out very, very early, way ahead of a regular student, because that's how far in advance recruiting happens. And we need to know from an admission standpoint, are you admissible and what is your likely academic money? And again, that money could change. If you tanked, maybe you're still admissible, but you lost $5,000. And maybe if your grades have gone up, your academic package. So there's never a time to get the senioritis to blow it all off, because it's going to come back to haunt you. You can only help yourself. And the better your grades are, the more school choices you'll have and the more money you'll get for it. So hit the books. Okay. Now we'll get to this slide and the next slide. This is first for women's athletes and women's sports. The scholarship totals that are allowed by NCAA rule. This is not Wayne Mazzoni's thing. This is not Sacred Heart. This is the NCAA's thing. You can go Google each sport, and basically what I did, I do the research, plug it in, and list out what the maximum scholarships are agreed upon by the NCAA. The way that this works is each school has a scholarship budget based on the NCAA. So if you take this basketball number here for 10 women's basketball Division II, you're allowed 10 scholarships. If the school costs $50,000, they have $500,000 in women's basketball scholarship money to dispense. Not every year of the recruits, it's the whole program. So that could be grad student or 50 or senior, junior, sophomore, freshman. The coaches, none of us are rocket science coaching college athletics. We go, okay, after this season, here's who's leaving. Here's the graduates. Here's who's not going to play again. Here's who's going to transfer. We now have $115,000 back in the program from these people leaving. We have $115,000 to offer to the new girls coming in, freshmen from high school or transfers coming in. It doesn't matter how you do the math. It can't exceed $500,000 at that school. If the school costs $30,000, 30,000 times 10 is $300,000. That's how it works. Okay. Now, as I throw up the number here for the men's sports, it's important to realize that this is the agreed upon max. This is the salary cap, if you will. Many colleges don't have the numbers that you're seeing here. So for example, if you take swimming, men's swimming, 9.9 scholarships they're allowed. If you want to know which schools have it, you can probably predict the Power Five, the Stanfords, the UCLAs, the Floridas, Florida States, the big college programs, the public schools, or the really popular private schools. They're going to be fully funded, whereas most other programs that offer swimming maybe have half that amount. They might have 4 scholarships or 5 scholarships. That's all they have. They're not producing any revenue. The football or basketball program's not on TV with contracts and ticket boosters and ticket sales, and they have what they have. So the bottom line is, how do you know when you're a scholarship athlete? Is when you get offered. When a coach says, we love the way you play, we got your grades, you qualified for $12,000 academic money, we're going to add 12,000 in for swimming, for tennis, and that's going to be 24,000 a year. That's 96,000 over the course of your 4-year time, and you'd be thrilled to get an offer like that. Again, since I'm doing all the talking, I will answer a question here, which I often get is, can I negotiate? Are scholarships negotiable? And, the best way to answer that is, I think a scholarship negotiation would follow the same way any negotiation would go. So if you work in a company and maybe you got offered more money by another company, you could tell your boss and he could do a variety. He could match it, he could increase, he could say, we want to keep you, but we don't have more, or he could tell you to go take the new job and good luck. So scholarship negotiations, if you will, take the same form as any negotiation. The one thing I'll say on this is football and basketball, men and women's basketball and football, are full or nothing. Let me repeat. In football, you're allowed 85 scholarships. They don't divide and dice up the scholarships. You get a full or you get nothing. Full meaning tuition, room, board, and books. Other sports are able to divide it up any way they want. They can give you $10,000, $6,000, $572. It doesn't matter. When you add all up the money that's being given out, it just can't exceed the number that's on the screen now. So football and basketball are fulls. Everybody else is a partial. They could give you a full, but most of them are allowed, they can all be divided up, and most do. Okay. All right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to my last slide, kind of finish my part, and then I'm going to go to the questions because I see popping up on my screen. There's a fair amount of them. And my last slide is my least favorite because I'm giving people advice on how to make a decision of actually picking a college when there's 9th graders on this webinar who've never been to one campus. So I'm giving you advice on the end when you're right at the beginning. But to be thorough, and the reason I do it is people rack their brains. I mean, I've known kids that I've recruited or helped that literally can't function until they make a decision, and they're torn apart how to make a decision. So all things being equal, I would go to the school that's either better for me academically or better for my major. Again, if I can't decide on 3 schools and I can't figure it out, or the one that's either giving me more financial aid or is cheaper, or I would go where the coach and you really have the best relationship. Again, I'm not saying in the beginning to go to a school you like the coach and hate the campus. I'm saying you're down to 3 schools. You can't decide. At this one place, you have a really good relationship with the coach. That may pay off to help you in terms of your athletic experience when everything else is going to be even anyway, the social life, the academics, the campus, all that. The reality is, again, a little different now in this dead period time, is that you should make a visit, sit in on classes, go to the cafeteria, watch a practice, watch a game, test drive the school, really go in there, make a visit. And when you do that, which is what we want you to do, and you'll make a gut decision, and it'll be a good one because you've actually seen a day in the life. You're not making a decision on an hour visit, right? You're making a decision by literally spending the day, meeting kids in the team, seeing how classes go, seeing the cafeteria, seeing the dorms, that type of thing. So ultimately, it would be back to the job search. The best way to make a decision on a new job would be like, hey, yeah, I'll come in for 2-3 days. I'll work here at these different jobs, and I'll pick which one I like the best. It doesn't work that way in the world of work, which is why a lot of people don't like their jobs, right? Why interns often do, because they intern, love it, stay on, and they're happy there. But you can make these kind of visits non-COVID to really make a gut decision. Now, actually, I'll do this. Let me take a peek at the questions. All right, so here's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to go look at the chat questions, if I'm assuming there are some, because I'm getting some of those personal questions, and some of them are a little bit, some baseball specific. So if anyone has any general questions to start with, let's do that. And then if there's any sports specific ones, I'll certainly do that. And obviously, since I'm a baseball guy, if the baseball people at the very end want to stay off and talk a little baseball shop, but I don't want to bore other people with talking baseball specific stuff. So is there anyone with any questions, regular chat or this Q&A that has questions about, and we can do it here too, because I'm sure there'll be a few questions about either a gap year, reclassifying, or post-grad, and the issues of what's happening, especially with the 2021 class. So I see more of those. I'll go to the Q&A. That's what I'm seeing here. So let me just give me a second to read that. So what's your opinion on taking a gap year? Reason that many athletes in the sport are taking 1 to 2 semesters off and the coach might not be able to recruit. This is for 2022. So I'm going to answer that as best as possible. So a gap year for 22, my first advice would be the following, that I would look to probably go to a post-grad year before a gap year, because for a gap year for a serious athlete, and I understand the reasons for the gap year, but you're talking about not getting any college credit, first of all, not really being able to be on a team or play. Personally, I think it would be better to probably go to a post-grad year at a prep school if you can afford it. They're not cheap. Maybe they give some deals to post-grads, but I would probably advise anyone to go the route of a post-grad rather than a straight-up gap year. The gap year people I would think would be more inclined to be the 21s. And I wouldn't do a gap year unless a college coach said to me, we like you as a 21, but we don't need anyone in your class because of the way the roster is. But if you became a 22, then we'd be interested. At that point, I would consider a gap year for the 21 class. I think it's way too early for a class of 22 and younger to consider taking a gap year. Do we ask our personal questions via? Yes. If you have a question that you don't want to ask to the group to be brought up now, it's about your situation, you don't feel like it, then just send an email to my name, wayne@waynemazzoni.com, and I'll answer it. That way, I think it's much better than you asking a question that's just not comfortable to the group there. So let me go back to the Q&A. So I'll answer this question here while anyone else wants to type one in. But the one on the Q&A was about basically baseball pitchers. Are you pretty much looking at velocity, or what's better, velocity or kind of command? I think the reality is for baseball, velocity is used as a gatekeeper. So if you said you have 2 guys throwing 85 miles an hour, which one do you like better? I like the one better that has more command, more secondary pitches. But if you said to most people, I have a guy throwing 85, but the guy that's throwing 80 is better, most are still going to go with the higher velocity guy, because velocity is hard to teach. And most people probably think they can teach how to command the ball better than they can in terms of gaining velocity. So that hopefully answers that question, but I'm happy to talk more shop on that after. Do coaches place value on multi-sport participation? Excuse me. All right, great question. I guess I'm going to answer it in 2 ways. One way is we just want good players however we find them, right? I mean, however we can find players, our job, we really don't have a lot to do except coach the guys we got as best as possible and develop them, help them be better on the field, be better people, and find new players. So however we find those players, we'll take. Now, if I'm down to a couple of kids, would I say, all right, all these kids are equal? Would I rather have a multi-sport kid? No question about it. No question. I think for a variety of reasons, maybe this kid isn't mentally burnt out. Physically, they have room to grow because they haven't been doing that one sport the whole time. I personally, and many coaches feel this way because many of us college coaches at some point were multi-sport kids. Maybe that'll change in 20 years and the new generation of college coaches will have all played a single sport when they were younger. But 95% of college coaches played 2 or 3 sports formally and then everything else on the side. So I think the fact is we like multi-sport athletes. I love that. I love to know that I recruit baseball players that have played hockey or played soccer or played football. The reality is that's not more valued than, so like, for example, a person just playing soccer year round is really good. There's a person who plays soccer and volleyball who's not as good at soccer. Are we going to upgrade that evaluation because they play a second sport? I think the answer is no. We're looking for good players. But I do know when I recruit players, especially the younger players that play multi-sports, I require them to not give up their second sport while they're in high school. So it's not like, okay, you've committed now, you're going to blow off these other sports. No, you should be playing those sports because you love them and you'll never get your high school career back again. And you should play sports. The biggest regret of college athletes is going, why did I drop that sport? It was a blast. Why did I do that? Right. And those are the ones playing in college, much less the ones that never made it to college for that. All right. Keep firing your questions. Pardon me for scrolling back and forth. If we are aiming, I don't know if you all see this that I'm reading, but if we are aiming for low Division 1 or Division 3, then do you suggest we create? Oh, no. If you're, I got two questions on the clearinghouse. How much is the fee? I think the clearinghouse fee is $80. You don't pay for, you pay one fee only ever for the clearinghouse. Okay. And you only need one account. So if you fill out the one for Division 1, it covers everything. So that's a good question. You don't have to go, gee, I might play Division 3 or Division 2, Division 1. I got to file 3 reports and pay 3 times. No, you only need to do it one time. There's one fee and that's it. There is no fee for Division 3. All right. Anyone else back here? Okay. All right. ID camps, etc. How many is too many? Great question, Michelle. Great question. You got to watch the camps. I mean, you're going to get a million invites. They're going to be glossy brochures, glossy websites. I think you should go to a couple. I don't think you should go to hundreds and blow your money and blow off your team. And you should go to a few that fit your schedule. If you continue to go and nothing's happening, it means you're probably not good enough to go. I need to go to this one. And I haven't been going to the right ones, or I didn't go to enough. I don't know if I could put a magic answer. How many is too many? More than 5. If you're going to more than 5 events, you're chasing too many. You're not getting the feedback, and it's not worth it. That's my gut. It's not an official report, but that's what I'd say, because I do see on the circuit a lot of kids going to a lot of different events, and they're just wasting time. How can we visit schools if most are closed? Many schools will let you drive around in your car. They'll let you actually park and walk around. They may not actually allow you to tour with admissions. My school, Sacred Heart, is actually touring. There's tours constantly going on. Some schools, I would definitely try to find out. I wouldn't be driving 3 hours to find out they're closed. But the majority of schools, again, need to fill classes, and they don't need to fill the classes. They have to have people on campus. So do your research, but a lot of schools are open just for those kind of things. Is snowboarding a valid sport? Snowboarding is a legitimate sport. It's not an NCAA recruited sport. So you could still probably get recruited for snowboarding just the way a club sport would be. So I should probably touch on that too, because club sports is a legitimate, viable, fun option for someone that wants to keep playing their sport in college. It's just not under NCAA guidelines, and you're not going to get athletic money to do it. But there are many colleges that have snowboarding and skiing that aren't part of the NCAA, sports. What is the youngest a college coach? What is the youngest age a college coach will look at? That's a tough question to answer. I think 10th grade is about the time that most will look at, but you can Google 8th grade football players that have committed to colleges. Absolutely. They go to camps. They go to, as a quarterback, goes to, the USC camp. He's in 8th grade. He wants to go to USC. He's already 6'3" and shaving. He throws a football 60 yards. The coach asks for and gets a verbal commitment at the camp. So most is, again, junior year. By 10th grade, you probably get a pretty good idea of where the kid is heading. So the youngest, I've made fun of some of my friends that work at some of these higher end schools that it's incredible at young of ages. They actually start tracking kids, but I think they're not really recruiting them until, they get to that high school age. So very good question. All right, let me go back to this one now. Can you explain the commitment of a college athlete versus college students who play club or otherwise year-round break? Okay, excellent question. You guys are good. Let me first say this before I get to, I'm going to actually answer this a little more than thoroughly. If you play a Division I sport, pretty much any sport, it's going to be more than 50% of your effort at the college, meaning that sport, between its practice, its film study, its lifting, its travel, is going to be more than 50% of what you do with your life, meaning going to classes and study and social will be less time than it will be for your sport. Division 3 is pretty much meant to be about a third. You're going to have a third athletics, a third academics, a third social. And just so we know, the difference between Division 3 and, let's say, Division 1 is not just scholarships and not just necessarily talent level. It's that Division 3 is more structured in terms of shorter seasons, less games, less off-season work, and less requirements, so that it doesn't become a full, overwhelming experience. Frankly, I enjoyed that as an athlete at the Division 3 level. I would see as a college coach, I like the division aspect because I get to be around the guys and coach them more. Club sports is a totally different level. It depends on the club sport, but for the most part, a club sport investment in your time is probably 15 to 20%. Much less travel, much less games, much shorter practices, optional practices, a totally different experience. I can't say that's at every university in every club sport, but I've seen a lot of club sports at the various places I've been. They have a blast. I will just tell you now, club sports have a blast. There's no pressure. It's usually student coached or a younger coach. And you know, again, this would be a little different if we were kind of interacting, but I would say this. If your desire to play your sport in college is not a 12 on a 1 to 10 scale, it's not going to work. If you don't wake up living, breathing, dying, obsessed with playing your sport in college, it's not going to work. It's too competitive. There's too much adversity. If you go, yeah, I kind of want to play like a 7 or an 8, play club sports, play intramurals, have a blast, get an education. If you're not desperate to play, it's very, 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 very difficult. Very, very difficult. Already, I said right back to the beginning, 93% of high school athletes, or 92%, don't play in college. The top group that do are very, very committed to that, and it's really, you know, everything that they're about. So, excellent question. Let me go back to this other one here. Is anything different getting recruited to a service academy? Fantastic question. I'm going to answer that thorough in 2 ways. Honestly, best webinar questions I've gotten. You guys are excellent. I thought you were starting slow with the questions, but you're coming through now. Two areas are a little different, and I want to touch on both. Number one is back to this slide, and I'm assuming, hopefully, you can still see my screen. Let me get back here. Okay. The Ivy Leagues, first of all. The Ivy Leagues, if anyone on that side of the computer wants to be an Ivy League athlete, you need to write this down, and that's the athletic index, the athletic academic index. The Ivy League has its own recruiting system in place, and the reason they do is that they want to make sure that all the Ivy League schools are recruiting equally to the school's requirements. In other words, they don't want Dartmouth going, let's win everything, let's just let in anyone, and we just start counting people. So the Ivies have set in, as a conference, requirements for each recruiting class that relates to the overall recruiting of the regular student, or the overall admissions requirement of the regular student. So step number one is, if you want to be in the Ivies, you have to look that up and know what the language is for the formula for the academic index. It's important. Okay, back to the service academies now. Okay, the service academy recruiting process is much the same. So college coaches find who they like. And it's interesting, and I'll digress before I say it. I have friends that work at all these service academies, and they basically say recruiting's a little different in that they're recruiting the United States. They could find a kid from everywhere. Who doesn't know Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, right? Everyone knows it. But he said, we do a lot of first phone calls and not second phone calls. So they find a kid in Texas that they really like. They call him up. They say, we're from Army West Point. And the kid goes, I'm not going there. And that's it. Okay. However, their reach is all over the United States. So, but their recruiting process is the same way. The admissions process is brutal. The admissions process to get into a service academy is incredibly tough. You need to have lockdown grades. You need to have references from, congressmen and politicians to be able to get you admitted into the school. So they might recruit you, but you're not through a step of a hurdle. You got to get admitted. And that's a different. Rob, I don't know if you know or have any more experience about what it takes to get into a service academy. If you know more than I do about the admissions process of it.
Actually, I don't with the
Okay.
service academy. I don't, but thanks for asking.
Yeah, you can, certainly Google it. I just know that getting in is brutal. I mean, I've been to every one of those camps. I've been to Air Force, Navy, and Army, and they're flat out unbelievable. They're worth everything. They're beautiful, make you proud to be an American, perfect shape. Everything's run well. Their athletics are killer. Their facilities are killer. It's really tough to get into. Obviously, there's no cost. You have to do your service after. It's totally worth it, but you need to learn it, and it starts immediately. If you're really interested in that, I would start now, finding out what ducks you have to get in a row to be able to get in at that level. So really good question. All right, Rob, I think I've answered. I'm going to go back to the main chat.
Wayne, if I could, while you check the screen there,
Yes.
and you look into some of those things, I would like to, I took a few notes here, and I'd like to say a few words to the folks here this evening, just for a minute or two, because I've listened to your presentation probably once a year, and it helped me, it helped my daughter end up as a right now a Division I athlete. And I want to just point out some of the things that you said that were invaluable to the process. The visits, getting out there and doing the visits. Can't say enough about it. We visited about 24, 25 schools, down from Alabama to Georgia, up to Vermont, out to Ohio State, Indiana. Worth every part of the process, and it was a tremendous help seeing everything. And yes, don't ever take me back here. We had some of those visits, and I can't wait to come back for a second visit, type of thing. Next thing I want to mention is about meeting the coach and contacting the coach and reaching out on her own. She did that. I know you were an advocate for that. Reach out, get yourself noticed. Don't be afraid to send an email. Don't be afraid to reach out there. The part about the labs, we found out that at certain schools, it wasn't going to work. Athletics and certain academic requirements. There was no questions asked. It was, nope, sorry, you can't be in this program. You will not get admitted. If you are on that team, it's not going to work. And I didn't know about that. I learned about that, having these conversations and setting a meeting up with the dean of the department of that particular school of study. Invaluable if you get an opportunity to do that. Questions, write them down, keep a book of questions, because you'll come back to those questions. And what we did, I think, Wayne, this was one of your recommendations. We sat at the table. I had my list of questions, my wife had her list of questions, and my daughter had her list of questions. Now, granted, her list of questions were the most important, but she got some questions from us that she didn't think of.
Right.
And that just helped her add to her list of questions. She wasn't going to think of them all herself.
Right.
So that little sit down, that hour we set aside to have a little think tank on questions, creating questions, was very helpful. We kept a notebook, and you talked about the gap year. So through the COVID, everything changed, not everything, but a lot of things changed. So she was admitted to the University of Indiana, and had a spot on the Division I rowing team, and she still has it. But she took a semester off because of the COVID. The coach said, "We're going to hold your spot for you. Don't worry about it. Take a semester. There are a lot of athletes that aren't coming." And it worked out where she's going back in hopefully in January. But she took a semester off, went to a community college, is taking the courses, and still has a spot there on the team. And she's thankful for that. So that was an interesting twist that we didn't
Yeah.
see coming.
Right.
Back to somebody mentioned about, so there was a question on there that came up today in my meeting with one of the guidance counselors about visiting on campus, in-person visits. Your smaller liberal arts schools, if you set it up in advance, might take you for an in-person visit, but they might only do 1 or 2 per day, right? Where the larger universities won't do that. But your smaller liberal arts schools, if you schedule them in advance, they may let you do that. I'm talking like 30, 60 days in advance. That's not easy to do, but it is done. And then 50% of your time, if you're an athlete, Division I, Division II, that's right on the money. Those are some things that were helpful and through the process, and listening to you tonight, having just gone through the process, how accurate this information is. So if people took notes, great. I know it's accurate information. If not, you want to go back and watch it again, we'll have it up on the website, Wayne. But I, once again, can't thank you enough for how you break it down and the items that you touch upon that are extremely important to the process.
Yeah, I hope, hope it puts a little structure in there and can help you a little bit, because it is not a fun thing to go to. There's a lot of struggle, and then when it does work out, it's all worth it. But you go through a lot of ups and downs on your path there. So thanks for having me again. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. And I'll send you that link probably tonight or tomorrow.
Okay, so you're finished with the question. You're finished with the questions.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. If anyone, if they have a hard time reaching you, they could always come to me. I'll help them get in touch with you. And I know that you're always there to help the students and the parents, and we thank you for that, Wayne. So thank you for everybody for logging on tonight. Wayne, thanks for spending so much time with us this evening, and I look forward to talking with you soon.
All right, sounds good, everyone. Have a great night. Thank you for tuning in.
Take care.
All right, take care. Have a great night. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.